Welcome to Texas Insurance Training Academy. This is Property and Casualty General Lines Initial License Training. Before we get started here, I just want to kind of go over the basics here. We have the first half, which we usually do in the first day, is going to be focused on personal lines, and then we get into commercial lines on the second day. So with that in mind, we will proceed over to the overall process before getting into the details here. The overall process is different for everybody, and it mostly depends on how you go through what we call step 0, which is preparing for the exam. The classroom and or the online accompaniment here is going to be the main base for you, along with our textbook. And then we have an online accompaniment through exampreptx.com, which is a different website than our texasinsurancetrainingacademy.com. Once you're prepared for the exam, which is going to be a little bit different for everyone, then you're going to go through 3 steps to get your actual license. The first step is to go through a company called Pearson VUE, where you're going to schedule and hopefully pass the examination. Pearson VUE's website has a lot of features in there. You are required to take this in the state of Texas in person. And you can find locations on the Pearson VUE website where to take this. We teach our class to the General Lines Property and Casualty Licensing, which is going to be INSTX-PC06. Don't really recommend taking it in Spanish, even if you're fluent in Spanish. Unfortunately, this is going to be one of those things that is going to be a lot more difficult because they use Castilian Spanish instead of standard Spanish that most people speak. Once you have been successful with step 1, you will move on to step 2, which is to initiate a background check with the state of Texas. The only reason you wouldn't need to do step 2 is if you were already licensed with the Department of Insurance. So if you've done a background check with the state of Texas previously, unfortunately, that will not help you in this regard. So you will have to go through a company called Identico, and they have a special code for initiating the background check, which is basically done by getting a set of digital fingerprints verifying your identity, but registering online with the code 11G6QF. Once you've got that completed, those first 2 steps, then you will be allowed to apply for your license in step 3, which is going to be through a company called Circon. And when you go through Circon, you're going to be able to access all of these links on our direct website, texasinsurancetrainingacademy.com. And your general lines will be the first thing you select, and then it's going to be property and casualty from there for the general lines. So that's the 3-step process in order to get your initial license and get your license with general lines, property and casualty. A few test taking tips and skills to kind of get out of the way. The best tip that I can give anyone for any test, but especially for the test through this Texas state exam, is that you got to make sure that you fully read the answer in total before you read any of the answers. You got to fully understand it, because they like to use specific words where they're going to change the meaning. The most common one is going to be all the following except, but they'll throw in things like always, never, not, every. And what happens when these words get used is that they change the meaning of the question. So it's extremely important that you actually understand what the question's asking. One of the things that we typically do in here is to phrase specific things that are going to be needed here, so that it makes sense. So we'll work on that as a technique for you going forward. Understand that the standard for the state exam is going to be that there is possibly more than one correct answer, but the test is based on the best possible answer. So probably a couple of times per overall test that will come up where that's the case. And just so you know, basically the examination is going to be a 2.5 hour period of time for you to take it. Everything that we have here is to try and get you set up for that entire process. Basically, there's 150 questions, 150 minutes, so about 60 seconds per question. There's a limited amount of math on there, but the passing score for the examination is 70%. Our goal for you and to meet our guarantee is to be at the 70% passing mark. For the state exam is to get you at 80% or higher on our online accompaniment exampreptx.com. This will be directly linked in the email that you got signed up with, or if you did an online only, this will be available through there as well. Just understand that the majority of this test is going to be memorizations of terms and definitions. As you know, the specific types of policies will use this information later on within those test questions. So you will be provided all the things necessary for the exam, usually a piece of paper laminated that you can use a dry erase marker on, or a calculator for any of the math type problems. So now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, I'd like to get into the beginning of the material here, which starts out with chapter 2. We come back and do chapter 1 at the end of day 2, just to kind of make sure that we are going over the basics of everything. Chapter 1 is Texas statutes, and it's backwards in the book versus the way that it's taught on the test. There's section 1, which is going to be chapters 2 through 16. And then once you've submitted section 1 on the state exam, you'll submit section 2, which is going to be just specifically on the Texas statutes. So we'll wrap up the end of the training with that specifically. And in Exam Prep TX, we're going in the order here of how we test this out. So the first section is going to be here on insurance terms for chapter 2. On the chapters 3 and 4 under provisions in contract law, then chapters 5 through 7 property policies, dwelling homeowners, and then chapters 8 and 9 under the 4th section. This is going to be personal auto policies and umbrella and excess liability policies, as well as residual markets. Those are going to be everything that we go through traditionally on the first day of instruction in classroom. On day 2, we start out with chapter 10 through 12, which is going to be commercial property policies, business owner policies, and inland marine policies. And then on chapter 13 and 14, that's going to be our commercial general liability and commercial auto, chapters 13 and 14. And then crime insurance under chapter 15, and bonds under chapter 16, with also the workers' compensation in chapter 16. And then again, we wrap up with Texas statutes chapter 1. So beginning here with chapter 2, insurance terms and definitions, understand that this is a lot of memorization here, but it is applied to all the other sections. So the way that these chapters go is that they kind of build upon each other. You may want to make sure that you've got a strong base here in the early chapters to make sure that you're going to be okay for everything going forward. So starting off with chapter 2, first thing, it's important to kind of define the different parties to insurance, because everything in insurance is a little bit different because it is designed to be legal. You've got lawyers and accountants who created insurance, and the whole reason that people get insurance in the first place is because somebody doesn't want to pay a big bill, and they want to pay a small bill instead of having to pay on a regular basis, instead of having to pay a big bill whenever it may just happen. And that's really all insurance is. So there are different parties that are to the contract and to insurance. And the first party is going to be the person that wants to not pay that big bill, right? So this is called the first party. Typically, this is associated with the applicant or the insured. The second party, this is going to be the insurer, also known as the insurance company. This is also going to include the agent because they're going to be contracted through express authority to work on behalf of the insurance company. So who you represent as an insurance agent is really the insurance company, and you would be part of the second party class of any legal definition of the parties to insurance. The entirety of liability is going to be third party. Sometimes this will come in on ownership of policies. If the person that's insured and the person that is paying for the policy are different people, that would be an example of third party ownership. But for the most part, anybody else that gets paid out in insurance, which would typically be liability insurance, which is another name for casualty, would just be anybody else that is not part of the first or the second party contract. Insurance. This is going to be defined as the transfer of risk of a financial loss from the first party to the second party. Risk is defined as the uncertainty or chance of a loss occurring. There are two types of risk, insurable and non-insurable. The insurable type is pure risk. In this case, you can only have the chance for a potential for a loss or no gain happening. Speculative risk, which is tantamount to gambling, there is a possibility of a gain. And therefore, because of this, the speculative risk is generally not insurable. The insurance companies, the way that this entire industry works is that they take a large group of people that have similar exposures to loss that they have a lot of data on, which makes it more predictable that those losses will be able to do so that they can potentially get a profit. So this is called a concept called the law of large numbers. And basically, in this situation, the company that has the largest number of people should, in theory, have the most predictable loss ratio available to them. Now, one thing that we always do is we go along with some of the questions in the book here, even through the presentation here. And so question 1 on page 31 is which company has the best chance of accurately predicting losses or of making a profit? The answers are the newest company, A, B, the oldest company, C, the one with the most customers, or D, Texas Lloyd's. Now, typically, I would allow for a classroom to answer this, but since I'm doing this on a recording here, the answer here is going to be C, the one with the most customers. And that makes sense because they are employing the use of the law of large numbers.